Hi. Um, let me get Melora on here. My name is Frank. I use they, them, their pronouns. Um, and I'm 17. Um, this is, I think, our fifth live. I'll check with Melora once she's on here. Um, but yeah, so this week we're going to be talking about feminism again, per usual. Um, and once Melora comes on, we'll kind of talk more about what we'll be talking about, but let's just get her on here. Hmm. So, we'll be talking, but we have like a list of questions that we're going to go through, and if anybody who is watching live has anything that they, want to add to the discussion, that is much appreciated. Alright, here we go. Hi, Melora.
Hi, Piranha.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am tired, but I just chugged a big thing of coffee, so now I'm less tired, but now my stomach
Less
is angry
tired.
with me. How are you?
Um, I'm doing all right. Yeah.
So I've already introduced myself if you want to introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, I as Piranha said, my name is Melora. um, and yeah, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am now 17 officially.
So let's talk about what we're talking about this week. So we are talking about what makes a good feminist,
hmm
right? So good is in, quotations because, that's very subjective. Uh, but there are things that make somebody objectively a feminist versus not a feminist. So I think that
hmm
there's like a lot of misunderstanding of what that means.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna set the record straight. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is what you um, what you think makes someone a good feminist, what makes someone not a feminist, um, just your general thoughts on that, and then we can kind of, go over the details of that. So what do you think?
Um, well, I mean, there's the basic definition of feminism that a lot of people kind of identify with, which is like equality between like, men and women. But I think that um, if you want to be like an actual, or I feel like in order to call yourself a feminist, you can't just focus on like one aspect of feminism. Like, like for example, like white feminism. That's not really like
Right.
that's specifically focusing on like white women. It's more
Right.
like you'd have to be like an intersectional feminist, which involves everyone, whether it's like, race, gender, sexuality, all this other stuff. And I think that, I don't know, I feel, in my opinion, while I agree with, equality between men and women, I think that in general, a lot of things I don't know. I think that. Sorry, I'm
You're
trying to feel.
fine.
I'm trying to think about how I should put it because, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Um. it's more, I think that while feminism has its basic general definition, it's also involves all other types of like social justice
Mm-hmm.
issues and whatnot. I feel like feminism can be found everywhere, whether it's in like, climate stuff or, racial injustice or like, all this other stuff that falls under it. So I think that mm, I guess more like supporting all types of like social justice causes, like what people are fighting for and stuff like that, in that sense
Yeah,
also. Because I think that even
yeah,
though because when I call myself a feminist, I also know that I support other causes like, you know, like abolishing ICE or, Black Lives Matter and, Pride and all this other stuff. So I support all of those things. And I think that that's a part of being intersectional as well, is not just it's supporting everyone, no
yeah.
matter the
I
type of like
agree, and I
social
think,
justice. Yeah. No matter the type of social
yeah,
justice
I
issue,
don't
if
think
that makes
you're,
sense.
I don't think you're, a real feminist unless you support those things. Because if your
Yeah.
feminism only supports your people, people that look like you and feel the same way as you, then you're not a feminist. You're just, uh,
Yeah.
self-preserving. And if your feminism focuses only on white people, then you're not a feminist. You're a white supremacist. And
Yeah.
I don't understand why people who, you know, are only in it for white women still call themselves feminists. Because, like, I mean, that has been an issue since the beginning of the word feminism, because the first people who most people recognize as feminists were the suffragettes, and
Yeah.
they were racist.
Yeah. That's
There were black women that were a part of them, but
yeah.
those black women did not ever get recognition. The white women would stand in front of them, in front of media, and I mean, I personally, when I was learning about them and the suffragettes in school, like, I didn't see a single picture of a black woman. It was all white women. I
Yeah.
never, and they they put up this big fight to have, you know, to give women the right to vote, but then, when black women
Yeah.
were facing extreme voter suppression,
Yeah.
they didn't do anything
Yeah.
at all. They did nothing. And I just see that, like, the reincarnation of that kind of feminism to this
Yeah.
day.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why, yeah, I feel bad because like I don't really remember learning a lot about like suffragettes in school at all really,
Hmm.
which I find interesting but not surprising. It's
Yeah,
kind of like, how a lot of kids don't really learn in depth about slavery in school.
yeah,
I mean, like, but then again, I learned the most, I think, from like my mom and my stepdad based on like,
yeah.
ever since I was like younger, I've known like other small things whenever we've talked about like, for example, like when we talked about like slavery in school, it would be very brief and they would just be like, yeah, they would blah 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 run away,
And then the
they
white
would get
people made it all better.
captured. Yeah, they would get captured
The
and
white
all that
people
other
made it all
stuff.
better, and it's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like last year when I had AP World History, I remember that we learned about. I don't really remember learning about like conditions of slavery. I just remember learning about the triangular trade and all the different
Hmm.
countries, like the certain countries that were in that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I don't really remember learning like I said, in depth about slavery. I think the only time that I've learned, you know, more details about slavery and a better understanding of like certain things surrounding slavery was probably this year, like, well, before COVID happened, this year in
Right.
my African American culturally relevant history class with my teacher, Mr. McClintock. He was really good at
Yeah.
talking about that stuff. But then again, I've also known a lot. I've also known a lot about slavery since my mom would talk to me about it, like ever since I was in maybe like third grade. So I like,
Yeah.
even if I didn't learn a lot in school and they went over it briefly, I would still know a lot about it anyway because my mom would tell me about it. So,
Yeah. I
but
remember
yeah.
being in third grade, and it was either third or fourth grade, and
Mhm.
our book about slavery that were given was about a white girl teaching a little black girl how to read.
Yeah.
And
Some of that
then,
white
like,
savior ish.
how, yeah, that was like all that we were given. There was no historical context. They were just
Yeah.
like, here's this book, and like and then it's like the two sides of that I was given were like, I was given that, and then I was also given like historical fiction where they went really in depth about like all of the horrific things that happened, but it was in a way that felt very the way that my classmates talked about the book and how fun it was to read was like really disturbing to me. I feel like there's two sides of it where like rather than it they my classmates got disconnected from that those are like
Mhm.
real things that happened because it was fiction, and so it was like very like they like enjoyed reading about these like horrific things that happened because it was like just so
Yeah.
extreme, and it was like
Yeah.
disturbing how much they
Mhm.
enjoyed the book.
Mhm.
It was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Also, most of the books I read, uh, I wrote an essay about this a while ago. Like all of the books that I read until um, high school were all written by white people,
Yeah.
and the books. I mean, just a lot of white savior nonsense that I was
Mhm.
reading from a very young age.
Yeah. I remember that too. But going back to like suffragettes and like all that other stuff, I remember I
Hmm.
found like, yeah, I just don't really remember learning really anything about suffragettes, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest. Again, my mom would talk about things like that I wouldn't learn in school at all. So I know some things, but not, I don't know. But again, yeah. But that's I mean, yeah, back then a lot of suffragettes were very like about white feminism and them getting the vote over other people getting it and more focused on
yeah,
themselves. I mean, this is why I don't like Susan B. Anthony because Susan B.
yeah.
Anthony was racist, and one of her like famous quotes is basically just saying that she would rather have like one of her arms cut off than, like the Negro, as she says in her quote, getting the vote
Ooh,
before
girl.
like before like
Ooh.
before her and other white women, that she would rather have her arm cut off than let black people
White
vote before
feminists
white
eat her
women.
up.
I know. So like, yeah, and I remember, I feel like if there was some type of talk about suffragettes in school, I would definitely remember Susan B. Anthony popping up like a lot
Yeah,
because
I remember learning
she's
about her
like
in
the
school.
main
Yeah.
one that people discuss. So, yeah. But what do you
Yeah.
like believe is a feminist?
Well, I think, like you were saying, intersectionality is so important, and I think that like being able to recognize that, you know, feminism is, ooh, just knocked all over all my stuff. Feminism is just, you know, wanting
It frozen.
see
Hello.
that all of these things are connected, you know, whether it's class, racism, sexuality, gender, like all of these different things that separate people, and people are, you know, brought down for, they're all connected, especially class. Like I can see the, you know, connections with all of these things, and I just think being a feminist is, you know, wanting the best for people and wanting a better world. And I think that, I don't know. I think that what makes somebody not a feminist is not being willing to learn, um, not being, you know, that people call themselves feminists. Really, they do that as a, you know, make themselves feel better than other people. A lot of you know, will
Mm-hmm.
just be like, well, I'm smarter than you, and then make their feminists super inaccessible to other people, talking about things
You
in order
keep freaking
to make
out.
people just making their inaccessible, like the things that they talk about, and never like explaining in a way that like the public understands, not letting other people grow. And yeah. And so
Mm-hmm. You
speaking
keep
about like what,
freaking.
can you hear me? Oh god.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
You're like, yeah.
So I'm curious. So our next question: what? How do you explain what feminism
Okay.
is? A person who says things like, "I'm a feminist." What do you think? What do you, what, how would you explain feminism to people like that? How do you?
Oh, you mean like for people who say like I hate feminists because like they hate men or like I don't want to
Yeah,
identify as a feminist?
yeah,
Okay. Um, I especially guys tell me that feminists hate men, and then when I try to explain it to them, they still don't believe me, which I find very interesting because
right,
it's I feel like it's just, I mean, I've had like one guy actually listen to me before explained what feminism is, like the basic general definition of it. And then I've also said if I like man hating, I explain like, you know, if you hate men, then you would call that person a misandrist because misandrists hate feminists and they want equality between both sexes or, you know, all genders essentially and, you know, between everyone. again, regardless of like, gender, sexuality, or race, they want equality between everyone.
Right.
And being a part of that, like, and wanting to be equal with everyone includes men. So men are not exempt from feminism. Men can be feminists. And I've tried to explain that to a bunch of people, and they still sometimes will not listen. And they'll still be like, well, you just don't like men because blah, blah, blah. And no, that's like, and I'll be like, well, that's not what I just said. If I hated men, I would be a misandrist, but I'm not a misandrist. I'm a feminist. So.
People hear the
And
fem
then,
part and then they just run with it.
no, literally, it's so frustrating. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I used to, like, especially in my freshman year, I don't know what it was with my freshman year, but a lot of people would say that to me anytime I said I was a feminist. They'd be like, oh, you hate men, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if I hated men, I wouldn't be sitting in this classroom right now because I hate you. Like,
And the other thing,
what, like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, it's just funny to me that people don't understand that there are different terms for everything.
Yeah.
Misandrist literally means a man hater. And I've explained that to a lot of guys who have told me that feminists hate men, and I was like, well, that's not the case because that would be a misandrist. I'm not a misandrist, I'm a feminist. I just told you that feminism is equality between everyone, which includes men. So you are not exempt, once again, like I just said. And
I
yeah,
always start the conversation with those type of people off with saying that, like, well, that's not what that means. But like once I just when because some people
yeah,
do, some girls and some non-binary people and some trans people and some anybody who isn't a cis guy,
yeah,
most of us feel uncomfortable with most men because they make us uncomfortable. Like
yeah,
and like say like lots of people say they hate men, but that's not, they obviously there's men in the world that they care about, but because of the, constant accumulative trauma that we pick up on in the world just from walking down the street and being yelled at, or having an uncomfortable conversation with a man, or being sexually harassed, assaulted, etc.,
yeah,
we learn to feel uncomfortable with men and protect ourselves from them. And if somebody hates men, then maybe it's a man's fault. I don't know. Like
yeah,
nobody, like people are allowed to feel uncomfortable with you, and that doesn't
yeah,
mean that, they're invalid,
yeah,
It really irritates me when people don't like,
yeah,
it's just irritating.
yeah. Of course, like, whenever I tell people that, whenever I'm explaining to people what a feminist is, I'm not like mean about it. I'm just like direct, I feel like. Like, I'll be like, well, actually, no, that's not what a feminist is. I don't mean to sound like rude or whatever, but that's man hating means misandry, but whatever. And then for people who say I don't want to identify as a feminist, I think that I mean, I don't have a problem with people who say that type of stuff. It's just like weird whenever you believe in feminism but you don't call yourself that. And if I remember
Right.
distinctly, I remember this quote that Emma Watson said about, people who don't want to identify as a feminist. I forget the exact quote, obviously, because I can't memorize every quote that I come across. But basically, she said something along the lines of how, even if you don't want to identify as a feminist, like, at the end of the day, if you believe in that type of stuff, that is what you are, whether or not you want to call yourself that or not. You know, if you
Right.
believe in equality between like anything really or everyone, then you are a feminist. I don't care if you don't want to call yourself that. That is what you are if that is what you believe. So, I mean, but of course, I think I've only met maybe a couple people who said that to me, like to
Yeah.
my face. And I remember the way that I'm not going to say dealt with it. I'm more so like, listened to them, I guess, about it, because they're all like, I know that one person told me that the reason why they didn't want to identify as a feminist was because feminist has a negative connotation with a lot of people when it's said, I guess, and they
Right.
didn't want to be, called out or, subjected to like harassment because of it. And I was just like, that's really sad. A lot of
Yeah.
people, I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, again, like, I remember thinking that, wow, I don't think I've ever heard someone actually give a reason as to why that's the case. And when I got that reason, I just thought it was so sad because it's like we live in a world where a lot of stuff is condemned if you call yourself that. And, people are afraid. And I mean, but again, it's not surprising that that's the case, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
like, especially like with communities. Your screen is frozen. Please.
I can now see and hear. You see and hear
Can you
me?
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I can hear you, but you're a bit like blurry and
Okay.
staticky here and there.
God. Okay, where were we?
We were on question 2.
Yeah. And you were saying something about homophobia?
No, I was just saying like because I was a freshman at the time. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was saying like when I was a freshman and my friend told me that they didn't want to identify as a feminist because it has like a negative, effect on a lot of people identify as one. Like years ago, like it's just sad we live in a world where people are shamed, call themselves, and how they identify as and whatnot. But again, it's not surprising considering, like, for example, like people in the LGBTQ plus community, like whether they are proud of themselves, and whatnot. There are always going to be homophobic and transphobic people who are very vocal towards
Right.
them. But, again, it's not surprising, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. It's been crazy lately. Have you been seeing all of this stuff happening out Mount Rushmore?
I have. I've been posting about stuff here and there. I just feel
Yeah, and
like
like
I've been trying to
there's
post
not a lot of
stuff.
information being shared.
Yeah, there's not. I know that I posted something about like bail funds, and I posted a few things about it yesterday. Um, but yeah, Instagram has been draining me out a little bit lately. I'm kind of just
Yeah,
sick and tired of going through people's stories.
I'm sick and tired of just seeing people posting performative shit and then disappearing, you know. Post
Yeah,
like and like so many people there's just been so much that's been like I've seen so many beach pictures and I'm like, first of all, what are you doing on the beach during a pandemic? Second of all, nobody wants to see you like on the nobody wants to see that. There's more important things happening. I'm just so confused why people are still posting like
yeah,
the most pointless things, you know?
yeah. I don't know. I just like I keep going through people's stories, and I guess I never realized how odd it is to see people post all this normal type stuff and then all of a sudden have like a social justice post. Like cuz I used to do that a bit much.
Right.
Like but now I think what I'm going to do is just have my other account be for like fashion type ish, and then my main account be for like social justice stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't
I just
know. I Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I find it really strange to watch people, like you were saying, like posting social justice things and then going right back to normal, in like one after another, you know, because it's like so obvious that they can just do that, right? They can just
Yeah.
like see something horrific, like something horrific that happened to someone, watch this horrible thing happen, and then go right back to their own lives without even thinking twice about it. And it just makes me like
Yeah.
so confused how disconnected people are.
Yeah, I really just want to like go up to people and slap them across the face. I, that sounds very violent, and I apologize, but I just feel like slapping people across the face who are
Me
going out
too.
right now, to party with their friends and, without masks in like bigger crowds, like in places and craft
Did
houses
you?
and stuff like that. And I'm just like,
Yes. Did you see the coronavirus parties?
I did not. um,
Yes. Okay, let me explain this. This is the thing that college students are apparently doing, according to the news, so who knows. But apparently, college students are having big parties where people who are tested positive for coronavirus are encouraged to come. And
what?
everybody like pitches in a little bit of money, and whoever catches the virus first at the party gets the money. You
How
heard
would you
that
know
right.
that you caught corona?
Because they start coughing and going, "Ugh." Like,
I thought that side effect
y'all are
doesn't show
doing
up
what
until
now?
like 2 weeks after. I'm so
I
confused.
mean, what on earth? That's just so nasty. What is wrong with people?
You just hear someone go in the
Yeah,
back.
like,
That's so
also,
stupid.
like, couldn't you just fake it? I don't understand. I don't understand.
I just,
It's just sick because each and every one of those people you know is going to break quarantine and they are going to get other people sick because they are carriers of the virus without showing symptoms
yeah.
because they've all
Yeah.
been exposed. That's nasty. What is wrong with people? Oh
Um,
my God. What the hell? Like, why would you do that?
I don't know. People are.
Does that sound fun? Like, that sounds terrifying. Every time I step outside of my house, I am terrified. Terrified. The thought of going outside and going to a giant party and taking off my mask, like, that's terrifying. No. Like,
Yeah.
there is no way in hell you'd get me to do that.
I just I just think it's so interesting because like um well, for starters, my mom is pregnant, so
Hmm.
um I'm going to have a little baby brother, another one, like
Oh,
next month actually, on the like,
tiny
so
baby.
yeah. But I didn't like I think it's so interesting that a lot of people just do not care whatsoever about other people besides themselves, because it's like I was gonna have, like, for example, like on my birthday last Saturday, which is a week ago now, like, so last Saturday was my birthday, and I was going to have a very, very quarantini, like, get together of like a couple or a few people at my house, like
Hmm.
maybe like 4 or 5 people. But of course, since my mom is like pregnant, we were going to be taking precautions like wearing masks, having hand sanitizer. If people need to use the bathroom, they will use Clorox to wipe it down afterward and all that other stuff. And when we are eating, we would all sit like 6 feet apart and stuff like that. So we'd be very, like, cautious and prepared, since I don't want my mom to get sick since she's.
Right.
And, I remember there's this thing that I was looking at on Snapchat and on my Instagram, where these girls were having I think a birthday party the day before mine, and it was like a bunch of people there, like without masks and all this other stuff,
Oh,
and doing things with each other and all this other stuff. And I decided to cancel my get together like the day before my birthday, because I didn't want to expose people, since I know that, like, one of my friends lives with her grandparents. They're easily, they can become easily sick. My other friend that was supposed to come, she might have been exposed to COVID. I'm not sure, actually. I remember she was telling me that she might have been exposed to it because of
my
her
God.
uncle. And, and then my other, like, people, they just are afraid, so I canceled it. And also, but I also canceled it because I also, like, I just don't want to expose my mom to that type of stuff, especially if I'm going to be having like a baby brother next month. I don't want him to be exposed
Right.
because his immune system is still developing even after birth. Very vulnerable in, like, the first couple years, so, of life, I guess. So I think it's interesting that, other people have to cancel things because they don't want to get people sick, or they don't want people to be exposed to corona. Yet there are people out there who just do not care, who are like, yeah, I want to celebrate me, so I will be having that birthday party of mine, and
It's
blah, blah,
so
blah, blah, blah.
sick.
And I'm just like, I mean, while I had fun on my birthday, I will not deny that. I had a very fun day with my mom. Like, like, I had to cancel stuff because I didn't want to expose people, and I didn't want to expose my mom. I know other people who had to cancel things because they also don't want to expose people, yet there are people out there who are careless, who just do not care. And it's
It's
kind of
just
like, if
ridiculous.
other people can do that, then I feel like you can too. And you have to realize that you are not the only one that you have to worry about. Like, there are other people out there who could have, like, who could be asymptomatic, carrying it and passing it along to you. And if you are also asymptomatic, you could pass it on to people again who are not asymptomatic, who can be affected by it severely, or just affected by it. It's like, you have to think about other people and who those people are connected to, because they could have, like I said, they could have parents who are older, they could have grandparents that live with them, they could have babies in their households, they could have kids who are vulnerable with it, like or they could have people again with like immuno like deficiency stuff, you know. So it's very interesting, I guess, to see.
And there's no like it's just so I don't understand how people are breaking like it just doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, this is making me mad. Let's move on to the next question.
I think we were on 3. Since we
Yeah.
have 20 minutes, I guess we can answer some of these like quicker.
Okay. Okay. What do you think is more important in activism? Your intentions or your actions? This is
Okay.
a hard question. I had
Yeah.
trouble with this.
Um. Yeah, I wrote down like some thoughts about that because I feel like I don't know, like I think that in a way it's kind of like phrased as I don't know. I think that like I think that it can go both ways. I feel like sometimes you can do something like I feel like you can have good intentions but then end up not doing as much for certain things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if we weren't in like if we were not quarantined, for example, and say that you posted like a couple things and that's like about social justice with like good intentions of like getting stuff aware. I feel like a lot of people would see that as being like, oh, they're only posting a couple things. Like, I don't think that they're whatever and whatnot. So I think that are you can have good intentions without doing like much action, if that makes sense.
Right.
You can also do like you can also do before you can also do things without thinking about them.
Yeah.
And there's also like an issue of I guess authenticity with certain intentions. Like you can hide your like real intentions through an action that you do. But yeah, I feel like that's not as whatever, but yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know. This question's really hard, but I mean, here's what I think is that I think that knowing first that your intentions are in the right place, knowing that what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing isn't selfish, that like you aren't doing this to
Yeah.
look good or anything like that, but because you believe in it, I think that
Mm-hmm.
doing anything is better than nothing. But I think always checking in with yourself and saying, why am I doing this? What is my process? What is my thought process on this? Like what is my true reason for doing this
Mm-hmm.
is important, but I think that doing anything is something. Like it's better than not doing anything. But like here's what I think about though is things like the black squares that people were posting. Like
Yeah.
great, you did something. That's great. But for instance, when they used the hashtag Black Lives Matter, then it's like, well, you're actually doing something harmful because you're
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of all of this information. All of this information is being swarmed with black boxes, and you can no longer find the actual Black Lives Matter information. So I think,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I think your actions, speak louder than uh, your intentions. Like, they more can be done with your actions than your intentions. Like,
Yeah.
but if your intention this is just such a difficult question. The way that I'm just saying these two words over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, just
We
a very
can.
difficult question.
Yeah.
All
We
right,
can move
let's
on.
move on to the
Okay.
next one.
My question is, how does one become more comfortable with their identity as a feminist? If they're
Hmm.
not so like being as like whenever someone first identifies it and they're having like like I said, like doubts, for example, because they don't want it to be seen as something negative, you know.
Right. Well, I just think like you just have to move forward. Like it's kind of selfish to be like, well, I don't want to identify as a feminist because I don't want people to be mean to me because it's like this is about something bigger than just you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do understand because, people really didn't like me in middle school because I was so like, and
Yeah.
so they didn't like me, and that sucks. But like, I don't know. I think just like finding your people and knowing that what you're doing is more important than all of that.
Hmm. No, I
Just,
agree. I agree. Yeah.
getting more and more educated and not letting other things get in the way.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think that, especially with me, like, I wasn't like afraid of calling myself a feminist, but I knew that there would be people that would be like, you know, oh, she's such a like, like, she's so about this, and she doesn't like men, and blah 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 blah, and all this other stuff, and I knew that there would be people like that. I
Right.
think, like you said, just like moving through it and pushing forward is kind of the best way to go for types of things like that, you know. Um, I
Yeah.
think over a while, I just got used to calling myself a feminist, and I kind of moved into that identity as calling myself someone and being proud of calling myself that, rather than being
Right.
like, oh my God, what if someone tells me this? What if someone tells me that? What if someone tells me that I don't like men? Blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be people who don't like you or who, like, don't like what you believe in. I mean, I'm not, like, like, I feel like if Christians can be proud of calling themselves a Christian, I can be proud of calling myself a feminist. If racist and homophobic, transphobic, sexist people can, openly say that they don't like certain people, I feel like I can be okay with calling myself a feminist and being proud of the fact that I want equality between everyone. So,
Yeah. And I don't want people who don't, you know, support equality for all to like me. Like, okay, go away then. Like, bye.
no, yeah, yeah, it's kind of just like, yeah, I don't know. With It's just something I think that you have to like get used to, I guess. If that's what you
Yeah.
believe in and if that's what you want to call yourself, like if you want to call yourself a feminist, that's just something that you have to get used to. You have to get used to people, being against it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, next question.
All right. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm.
Five.
What do you think people can do to ensure that their feminism isn't self-serving?
Um, I kind of feel like there's always an element of self-serving within like anything. Not saying that
Hmm.
that's like I'm not saying that that's the main thing that needs to be involved, because it's not. Like, you shouldn't be only about who looks like you and like your specific rights, and like, for example, like white feminism. No. That's self-serving. That's literally like, for you, if you are a white woman and other white women and stuff like that, like that's an example of self-serving, because you're only focused on the white aspect of feminism. Like, so, like, I don't know. There should be an aspect, of, wanting rights for yourself, and, like, but at the same time, that's not the only thing that you have to focus on. focus on yourself, but also focus on other people as well. Besides that, like the fact, like what I mean to say is like focus on everyone else. Like the focus on everyone else should be bigger than that of focusing on yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
But also working as, I don't know. That sounds really confusing. I apologize. I hate explaining
No,
things.
you're fine.
I'm terrible at explaining things. Um, yeah, but while you're involved, like for example, like Black Lives Matter, like the Black Lives Matter movement. I think that while people are involved for like while the people involved in that movement are supporting themselves and their rights and the right to live basically, like they also support other like movements, like for example like Black Lives Matter is all about like abolishing ICE and supporting people in that area, and along with like the LGBTQ plus community and all this other stuff involving that. Like they're not just focused on like black life. So
Yeah, I think that it's like including I think that it's, a community thing. It's like you're fighting
yeah.
for your community and other people's communities, and they're
Mm-hmm.
protecting yours as well. Like it's a,
Yeah.
everybody's just doing
Yeah.
just doing everything for everybody, and I think that that's, beautiful. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like there was, in the Black Lives Matter community, they were, there was that white boy that was killed by police, and the White Lives Matter people weren't saying shit about it, but the Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter community was, because it's not, it's bigger than just one thing. That's like what we've been talking about this whole time, is the idea of like intersectional feminism.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the way that I explained that was really bad. Yeah. I think that while supporting your own community, like it's also recognizing that there are other communities that also need support. So you can support your own community obviously, especially if you're affected by something. But there's also like like a way of, including other people within that as well, I guess, is what I mean to say.
Yeah.
So it's more about like to ensure that your feminism isn't self-serving, like it's good to focus on other people besides yourself more so. Like
Yeah.
recognizing that you are not the only person that has issues in the world. There are other people who are facing other separate things as well that need help.
Yeah,
So
I think
while fighting
insurance.
for yourself and like your community, there are other communities that also need support. And recognizing
Yeah.
that is a way of making yourself like less self-serving than what needs to be.
Yeah, and I think also checking in with yourself, like if you are now, if you are all of a sudden just now starting to post about Black Lives Matter, or you are just now, you know, talking about all of these things, why? Are you doing it now because other people are talking about it and you don't want to look bad, or are you doing it because you actually love Black people?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's another thing that people have been talking about with when talking about like police abolition is, making sure that you love Black people more than you hate cops.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like you can do both at the same time. Oh, trust me, you can. But
Yeah.
you like there
Yeah.
are it's important to see all the things going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yes. Okay. It says, unfortunately, there are many people out there who say that they support things like the Me Too movement, or basically like the right to say no or believing people's stories, the Black Lives Matter movement, or the LGBTQ plus community. But when it comes down to it, they do not. Have you experienced any of these? If so, how have you dealt with it? And of course, you don't have to share anything if you don't want to, or like certain things if you don't want to.
Yeah. I've
What kind of
definitely
pushback?
experienced this.
Yeah.
As a person who is queer, I've experienced that like firsthand, like experienced people being like, "Yeah, I totally support you," and then they say some weird shit to you when you're like one on one, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Okay." Um, and I've also had a lot of, friends who turned out to be performative activists, uh, you know,
Yeah.
because I people eventually show their true colors, and I've had
Yeah.
to leave a lot of people behind because they ended up not being who they said they were. A lot of people pretend to be anti-racist and pretend to be anti homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia, but then, in their interpersonal relationships, I mean, I'm trying not to like be like these people, but you
Yeah.
know, I have, in my friend group, there are, I'm scared that the people who I'm like trying to not talk about are gonna know that I'm talking about that. But like, I've had to lose some friends because they weren't they weren't, hmm, they didn't put their, they
Hmm.
said they were all talk and like in their interpersonal relationships, I found out that they were treating me as a white person better than my friends who are people of color, And
Hmm.
then it's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
That's just it. That's it. Then it's over. I
Yeah.
just I don't think that there's much for me to deal with in those situations because I'm not the victim of their ignorance. It's just my job to not support it and move and tell them I don't support what they're doing and move on. Like,
Hmm.
and then I don't get to have big feelings about it and be all me because
Hmm.
it's not me who they're mistreating. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I've had issues with like, for example, like the three that I mentioned, like with the movements and stuff specifically, like um in my freshman year, I was like repeatedly harassed and sexually harassed by this one kid for like 3 months straight. And I remember when I went to tell my friends about it, like I thought I could tell them because they would always be like, about the Me Too movement and believing people's stories and all that type of stuff.
Right.
And we talk about, like, for example, like the whole Larry Nassar thing that came out with the gymnasts. And I remember when I told them about it and I told them that I was scared and that I didn't want to go to school, like, at
Yeah.
all because of this person, they laughed at me and they told me that I was overreacting and that I shouldn't take it that seriously and that he was only trying to do this and whatnot. And I just remember, like, giving up at that point in time because it was very hard for me to hear that from people who I thought were my friends. It's a good thing that I'm not friends with them anymore, but I just think it's
Yes.
hilarious that they say that they support all these like types of movement, like all these movements, yet they have incidences in their lives where they have said things to people that show that they don't. Like
Yeah.
with the Black Lives Matter movement, I I like my may not look like it because of my skin color, but my brother is black and he looks black, and so is my family. Like my mom is black, my stepdad is black, and my little brother will be black. They all look black. I look white. um, and I acknowledge that, of course, but like I worry about them all the time, like every single day, because one day I could have them and one day I could not. And, I mean, I am generally, because of like, white privilege and all that other type of stuff, I'm generally not afraid of that, like, cops will do something to me, But like when I'm like with my brother